Hello and welcome to another episode of Chatting Films with Coffee with me, Simon, and my mate Mike.
All right.
Hello, mate. You all right?
This is really weird because you're kind of staring me in the face.
Yeah. I feel like we're on a date. Do you know what I mean?
There's a little bit. We should sort of put some little flowers just here, just so that we can duck around the flowers and yeah.
Maybe like a little candle in the middle.
Yeah, that's it.
Should explain. Me and Mike are actually we're doing this via video chat with a very, very good company who we basically stumbled upon. Yeah, there was a bit of a mix-up. So basically, me and Mike are now basically doing this via Skype, essentially, but a company that are better than Skype. And yeah, we're basically going to do the podcast, but chatting basically in an online meeting, which is quite weird. It's a bit surreal.
It feels quite good though, because obviously you're in London, I'm in Brighton. It's like I don't know, we're bringing together two great communities of creativity.
Yes, and lots of great coffee in both cities.
Yeah. And that way we can drink two different types of coffee.
Very true.
And review them both. So,
well, without further ado, Mike, today I am tucking into a very sexy Brazilian and Colombian. How about yourself?
That was a wonderful half-breed. I've gone African today, Simon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a nice little Kenyan. Tastes quite jammy. From Small Batch, which is a Hove-based roasting company, and tremendous coffee.
Yeah, you've bought me a couple of bags from Small Batch before, and I've been very impressed with them. In fact, I actually got a text from Mike earlier on in the week, basically of a picture of the said Kenyan blend, and it was accompanied by some quite fruity language.
yeah. I went a touch over the top with my initial grind, so the strength of the coffee was too much even for me. And as you know, that too much coffee for me does one of two things: either a headache or several quick trips to the bathroom. And in this case, it's both. But nonetheless, I've gone back to it, so it's sort of a sadistic pleasure, I think.
Good. That's good to know. I'll always remember the time that we were in Paris filming at a cafe where you could basically help yourself to as much coffee as you wanted, and I think me and you had about 3 or 4 espressos in about
dangerous idea that
an hour. It was dangerous, and I essentially followed you to the bathroom.
Yes,
we won't really go into too much detail, but it was quite. It was an eye opener, wasn't it, into what coffee can do to you?
Yeah, it doesn't smell the same coming out as it does going in. I'll tell you that.
Speaking of poo, you ready?
Yeah, it's a very loose link.
This is going to be a great link. I went to the Christopher Robin premiere earlier on in the week, Mike.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that based on the child that was kind of loosely told that, like, the Winnie the Pooh stories were kind of told too, and then it all kind of went from there, or is this based on the character?
I'll be honest, I haven't seen the film, so it's quite difficult to promote a film if you haven't seen it. It's difficult. I think basically what it is, it's Christopher Robin, all grown up as Ewan McGregor, who's struggling in his day-to-day life, and so recounts his friendship with the animals. And by all accounts, it seems like a very sweet and charming story.
So he goes back and finds Pooh and Piglet and Tigger and gets them all back together for one kind of last big summer, so to speak.
Like Superbad.
Yeah, just like Superbad.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of it. It's got a very, very beautiful trailer. If you get a chance to look at it and check it out. The video of the red carpet is also on Virgie's site, so check that out if you want to. But yeah, it was all right. I didn't get to speak to Ewan McGregor. Spoke to the voice of Winnie the Pooh, and I spoke to a 9-year-old kid. Difficult interviewing a 9-year-old.
I can imagine. Overconfident or really quite nervous?
I would say not nervous, which was striking. I was more nervous than her.
Whether that 9-year-old realizes that what is coming for them is far greater than what we had as a 9-year-old child. Exactly. She's in and around Hollywood.
She was very nice by all accounts, and fair play to her. Winnie the Pooh voice was lovely. spoke to producers, spoke to director Mark Foster.
Okay.
A very zany, wacky German director who directed World War Z.
Oh right, okay.
He was quite intense. I said to him, like, I asked him, how does it feel to, be a part of the legacy that is Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and A.A. Milne for that matter. Yeah. And he basically said, like, oh, it's great. It's lovely that we're able to do this. And my daughter, it literally sounds exactly like this. This isn't even a ridiculous impression. I was watching this thing with my daughter and she was like, why don't you ever make a movie I can watch? And she was carrying a Winnie the Pooh. She hasn't seen World War Z. I think that's a mistake. It's a great film. And if your dad's there, it's basically like you've got the director's cut commentary on it. Just next to you. But yeah, he was saying like how his daughter wanted him to do a film that she could watch, and he was like, oh, okay, maybe I should do the Pooh Bear. And I was like, okay, why don't you combine zombies and Winnie the Pooh and make a zombie Winnie the Pooh? And he went, haha, yes, although Pooh is not a zombie.
No, but that's the idea.
Yeah.
Not every character has to be a zombie-based film. Well, if he does it, you now have evidence on camera that it was your idea, so therefore, the right effectively belong to you.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, I'll just take a producer credit for it. It was quite but yeah, it was good. It's always nice to do them. It would have been nice to be spoken to you, McGregor, but I'm certainly not going to complain. It was a good video.
It did answer one of my questions, oddly, but as I was making my dinner in the week, I started thinking as to what is happening or what's happened to Ewan McGregor. He sort of vanished off the face of the earth for a while, and then obviously the Train Spotting sequel came about, and then he kind of vanished again. And obviously, this is what he's been up to.
Well, I think he does a TV show as well, which I think he might have won an Emmy for or a Golden Globe a couple of years ago. It does seem that a lot of film stars are turning into TV, just because I think the roles are a lot meatier for. You can essentially make, like I say, it's a 6-part series. You're essentially making 6-hour-long movies, aren't you?
That's it. I mean, you think, if you could get onto a Netflix or an Amazon Prime drama, then you've potentially got years of being within that character.
Yeah. And years of making
a lot of money.
A lot of money. Yeah, I was going to say that. A lot of money. So that's Winnie the Pooh, Christopher Robin. That's out at some point. And also out, again, haven't seen the film, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Also out in the next couple of weeks is Spike Lee's new film, BlacKkKlansman.
Okay.
I saw that last night, and it was brilliant. It's a definite Spike Lee film, and it's produced by Jordan Peele, the director of Get Out. And it's definitely heavily influenced. You can tell it's a piece of cinema that is heavily influenced by both of them. So, guys, check out the trailer to BlacKkKlansman now, and in about 3 seconds' time, I'm going to give you my review. So, BlacKkKlansman, Mike, you have just checked out the trailer. First initial thoughts.
It looks like it touches on some pretty serious and very obvious issues of the time that it's set. So what was it, mid-70s?
Just 1970s.
And set throughout the 70s, an interesting storyline. I mean, I get from the trailer, there's a bit of comedy in there as well, so it's not all heavy hitting. The sort of film that I would certainly go and see. 100% go and see.
Good. Well, you basically hit the nail on the head. It is very funny, and it's also very upsetting and tough to watch. So BlacKkKlansman, as I said earlier, is directed by Spike Lee and produced by Jordan Peele. And the film tells the true story about an undercover black cop who infiltrates the local chapter of the KKK. I didn't realise the KKK was ran in local chapters.
It's a bit like the Boy Scouts, kind of.
The racist grown men Boy Scouts. So starring John David Washington as Ron Stallworth and Adam Driver as his Jewish detective colleague, Flip Zimmerman. which I think is surely one of the best names in cinema history.
Flip.
Flip.
Not Philip.
Originally Philip, shortened to Flip.
Flip. Okay.
The film is set in the early 1970s, and the film opens with a very intense Republican public information film narrated by Alec Baldwin, warning of the dangers of integration between white and black people. Sounds like a very heavy way to start a film, and it is. But as you alluded to earlier, Mike, it's also very, very funny. Now, what Baldwin is talking about, and I can't stress this enough, isn't funny. What makes it funny is the fact that every 20 seconds or so, he breaks up the intensity of his performance and the scene by loudly coughing, stumbling over his lines, and doing random vocal exercises halfway through his speeches. So it's really funny because it's sort of like you're hearing these horrifically racist views mixed with like just completely random, and he does it all with a completely deadpan face, and it's really, really funny, and it basically sets the tone.
That light relief.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great way of mocking this person's views, and that basically sets the tone for the film because it lays out all these horrific racist views and mocks not only those views but also the people who have them. So following on from the beginning scene, we see Stallworth being interviewed to join the police force after seeing a poster that says minorities are encouraged to apply, and immediately finds himself in the dull and boring records room where one of the officers, Landers, takes issue with Stallworth as the only black member of the force. After expressing his desire to leave the records room and go undercover, Stallworth is asked to monitor a talk of a black student union with a Black Panther member, Kwame Ture, giving a talk about black power. Stallworth's job is simple: to monitor the tone of the meeting and to ensure that no black students are encouraged to start a race war. After the meeting, he arranges to meet Patrice, head of the Black Student Union, for a drink after she's taken Ture back to the airport. Patrice arrives late to the bar after being pulled over by the police and sexually assaulted by Landers. The next day, after impressing in his undercover work, Stallworth is promoted to the undercover team and almost immediately picks up the phone and speaks to the head of the KKK of his local chapter as he tries to uncover them. But because he's a bit of a newbie and a bit of a rookie, he gives his real name, making his Jewish colleague Zimmerman assume his identity and infiltrate the KKK himself. So, yeah, it's a funny premise and it's a true story.
Yeah.
It's very funny to watch a black man talk to the head of the KKK.
Yes,
it's really funny, and they make so many jokes about that as well. Like the way there's a scene where David Duke, the head of the KKK, is talking about the difference in how white and black people speak, and they make a lot of jokes about that. It's very funny. So as well as it being very funny, it's also very touching, and there are some incredibly well shot scenes. The scene of a Black Student Union, for example, with the talk from the Black Panther speaker, is so touching because you're watching this Black Panther speaker talk about black empowerment and embracing who you are no matter the color of your skin. So you're seeing that, and you're also shown shots of completely mesmerized students basically being inspired to be who they are. And it's almost like a montage, and it's really, really lovely. It's very, very touching. There's also a scene at a shooting range. Once Adam Driver has infiltrated the KKK and he's in with them, they're at a shooting range. And he's basically talking to them, and he's hearing all these ridiculous views and how they feel like white people are basically the supreme beings. And there's a lot of laughter and there's a lot of jokes in the audience because of what they're saying is so ridiculous. But once the KKK move and they go back inside and Stallworth is taking pictures of them, you're shown what they're actually shooting at, and they're shooting at cartoon black people. And so it's like cutouts of black people. So it's also like, look how funny these bigoted racist people are. Oh God, this is real.
There is a message. Yeah. It's very cleverly done, but still gets the message across very clearly.
Absolutely. So it's again funny and touching. Very, very powerful as well. There's also another scene later on in the film where the Klan are watching a very, very old film called BlacKkKlansman, where hooded figures ride horses and murder black people. This basically gave the inspiration to the movement. So you're seeing the members of the KKK watch this film, and at the same time, it's cut beautifully with a scene where an old black speaker is recounting a terrible memory of his friend being murdered, which was inspired by the film they're watching. So you've got two scenes going on at the same time. You've got a bunch of white people laughing and celebrating the horrific murders of the town's black community. And you've got an old black speaker talking about how his friend was killed basically because of this film. And that is actually really, really difficult to watch, because it's mad to think that people not only used to think like this, some people still do.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, it's amazing to watch. There's also a lot of modern day Trump references as well, which will make you laugh, but it will also make you worry in terms of today's society. There's a few references to the Klan wanting to make America great again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's clearly something that he is synonymous with. And there's a really funny scene where Stallworth is basically naive into thinking that America would never vote or indeed elect someone like that who shares the same views as the Klan. Certainly gives you something to think about.
Yeah.
The cast is terrific. John David Washington is fantastic as Stallworth. He has great comic timing and flicks between being both silently enraged and incredibly calm throughout the film. Adam Driver is also thoroughly pleasing to watch. He's sincere, funny, and I've seen a lot of his movies, but I would say this is probably his most mature performance to date. He delivers a very poignant moment in a scene where he talks about his Jewish heritage and how being confronted with the Klan on a daily basis is making him think more about his family and his own background. There are some good performances from Laura Harrier as Patrice, Robert John Burke as Chief Bridges, and Frederick Weller as Landers. And there's also some great performances from members of the Klan, from Ryan Eggold, Jasper Parkonen, Paul Waterhauser, and Ashley Atkinson, who plays the wife of one of the Klan members. And she is brilliant in this film. And so is Topher Grace as the head of the Klan, Grand Wizard David Duke. And I think both of them deserve a special mention because their performances are very, very good, but also quite unnerving to watch, shall we say. I'd say the film is slightly too long. I love a long film. I'm a big fan of Apatow, for example. He doesn't exactly do short films. But I'm a fan of long movies as long as the story doesn't get dragged out, and I feel like it does slightly. I think you're the same with that, aren't you?
Yeah. Again, I enjoy a film that has some length to it as long as there is something happening and it's there for a reason. If they've chucked in an extra half an hour just to give us just a little bit of character development or something that really we could do without, then no. I'd sooner a film just does what it needs to do. What is the runtime of it?
The runtime is 135 minutes, so yeah, I mean, it could afford to lose 15 minutes. Having said that, though, it does go on, but it's not uncomfortably long, and you are being given a good, thorough background of the characters. So it doesn't feel like it drags, which is, I would say, is a compliment.
It needs to be of a length to get in, because it's dealing with such important issues. It needs to have time.
Yeah.
To kind of do what it needs to do.
It does, yeah. It definitely builds up the characters as well. But, you know, considering this is a film about a member of the police force infiltrating the KKK, he doesn't actually pick up the phone to the KKK for about 25 minutes in.
Okay.
But again, it does build the characters well. So it's not like it's overly long, but it could be that little bit snappier, I would say. I would also argue that towards the end, the film is in danger of fizzling out, but then it totally picks up where it needs to pick up. And it really does have a monumental last few scenes, which I think will shock a lot of people. Spike Lee purposely doesn't show a burning cross until the very end. And I don't really want to say anything too much about it or anything else about the ending, because I don't want to give it away, because it's a really incredibly touching end to a film. Overall, I think it's a really powerful piece of cinema. The direction, performances, writing, they're all fantastic, and it treads the finest of lines between comedy and tragedy perfectly. There are parts where you want the story to be told a bit quicker, but given the ending, you'll be pleased it's dragged out the way it is. I'm giving it 4 out of 5, and I highly recommend going to see it when it comes out on August the 24th.
No, I think I'll be sure to see that. I think I'm a big fan of historical-based films, whether they are completely factual, part fiction, part fact, or what have you. And yeah, it's an interesting period of time. So you can always learn something from these types of films as well as be entertained.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I think, especially towards the end, you've had a laugh. You've also been hit by what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And what I left with was quite the scary thought of this is actually still so relevant.
Yeah. And I think that's where the comedy comes in, because you have those moments of relief. I think it makes those kind of hard to watch sections even more hard hitting.
What this film does so well is it manages to essentially mock those who have this view of life and this view of humanity. So I would definitely recommend going to see it. It's out in a couple of weeks' time. And if you do go and see it, let us know what you think. So, Mike, you're one for snappy titles for radio features. Why don't you tell everyone what our latest feature is?
Our latest feature? Yeah, I put me on the spot to try and come up with something snappy, but quite simple. Films that you can't believe are 10 years old.
Yeah.
Nothing snappy about it, but it does exactly what it says on the tin. I find that this day and age, where I'm getting ever so slightly older, films that I kind of grew up loving, you forget how old they actually are.
Yeah.
Films like Saving Private Ryan was like 97.
I know.
Like that. 98. Forrest Gump, the same sort of time, 20 years ago.
Forrest Gump, 1994, I believe.
94, that's the kid. Yeah. Imagine you know, and still great films. But I think the ones that we've talked about and are going to talk about today are I think, incredible films. And particularly The Dark Knight, which I can't believe is 10 years old.
Neither can I.
For various reasons. I think because it was kind of the film that, although he was in other things, that really brought Heath Ledger into the realms of like super serious, very hyper-talented actor. And then obviously what's then happened to him since. I guess it all seems very current to an extent.
Yeah, I feel like that's an interesting point, actually. I think that because of what happened to Heath Ledger, he wasn't even alive for The Dark Knight to be released.
No.
Because Heath Ledger dying doesn't feel like 10 years ago. There's no way that The Dark Knight can be 10 years old, but it is. And it's pretty much, I mean, practically to the month that it came out 10 years ago. And I wonder if, you know, when famous people die young, they're always immortalized as a young person, like the 27 Club, Winehouse. You look at Kurt Cobain, Heath Ledger. I wonder if that effect also works for movies, because, like we were saying, I think maybe The Dark Knight is now etched in some of that light.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, I completely agree that it seems like, well, certainly not 10 years since Heath Ledger died.
Yeah,
certainly not. And I think the film seems older than that, but then you forget how close it all kind of happened. Like you say, like he died before the film was actually even released. And I think that will forever keep The Dark Knight in relevancy, I guess. People will always link the two together. You talk about Heath Ledger, naturally people will talk about this film.
What would you say is your favourite thing about The Dark Knight?
I mean, I am not a massive superhero film fan.
Me neither.
It's not something that I certainly would not rush out and go and watch. But this film, I keep going back to. The opening sequence is for me one of the best opening sequences in film.
Yeah.
It's up there with, I just mentioned the film, the opening sequence to Saving Private Ryan, which I think is incredible. But this, just around the bank heist and as an introduction to the character and how kind of well played out that whole section of film is, you're immediately in then. You watch that and you think, wow, if the film's starting like this, this is worth sitting through. Again, it's a long film. It's 2.5 hours, I think. But it's 2.5 hours long, but it feels like it lasts about 45 minutes.
Yeah, totally.
Always something happening. And these are characters that you understand. Obviously, you know of Batman, you know of the Joker. But to see them on screen and being played as well as they are in this film, for me, it's the only superhero film that really I would give the time of day. And it was the highest grossing. I believe it was the highest grossing superhero film until the Avengers. Wow. Which says a lot. And I think it's been considered in the top 3 or 4 films of all time. I think it was 2 days after it was released. IMDb had it rated as the best film of all time.
Really?
And now it's only, I believe it's now only third on that list. I think it ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of people.
Yeah. I remember I watched it for the first time in Ireland with my cousin. And that scene where the camera pans onto the Joker holding his mask down by his leg, and you just think, oh God, this is going to be, you know when you can just, you feel the excitement and you feel the tension before he's even uttered a word. You just think, this is going to be big. There's a bank job going on and we haven't even got to the Joker yet.
I don't want to make this whole thing about Heath Ledger, but he does play the role. I mean, everybody kind of felt Jack Nicholson, he is the Joker. Like, you can't top his Joker, or what was, perceived to be kind of the perfect Joker. And it was Michael Caine even said when they were casting that he had real concerns about the film's prospects until he found out that Heath Ledger was playing the Joker. So he felt that he was the only actor who could actually top that performance.
Really?
And he did. I mean, in terms of, he made the particular, just nuts, wasn't he? I mean, he just came across completely psychotic. The whole kind of, I can make this, what was it, a pen disappear?
Yeah.
And smash the guy's face down on the table. I mean, it's pretty horrific.
Yeah. But funny as well.
Yeah, very. And I think, for me, I mean, there's so many interesting things that go around that film. The Joker's makeup. Ledger did that himself. He just went down the shop and bought some makeup and started playing around with it. I think he locked himself in a hotel room for 2 weeks just to try and come up with the character. Would it be seen as one of the great films without his performance?
It's difficult to say. I guess at that time, so 10 years ago, big character actors would have been Johnny Depp, Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Maybe the start of Jake Gyllenhaal, but I'd say his character work has come more recently. I don't
think there was anybody who would necessarily be able to portray it certainly in the same way that he has.
No. I think. Did you see Suicide Squad with Jared Leto as the Joker?
Bits got absolutely panned, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. I felt sorry for him because he's not in the film nearly as much as he should do. And to be fair, like, they went a completely opposite direction, which is what they should have done, because there's no way they said, like, okay, this is what we've seen with the Joker. Best of luck. You've got to recreate that now. It's basically, look, it's a blank canvas. We see him as like an 80s gothic gangster. Let's go with it. So I'm pleased that he went in that direction. I mean, yeah, I think maybe Depp or DiCaprio would have been really the main choices 10 years ago.
I couldn't see him in that role though. Johnny Depp maybe. I couldn't see DiCaprio playing that role. I don't know.
Well, the latest reincarnation of the Joker is going to be Joaquin Phoenix, which I think is going to be very, very interesting and very exciting to watch. Again, he wouldn't have been right for it 10 years ago, though. It just seemed it just seemed that Ledger was the perfect choice at the perfect time for pretty much, in my eyes, the perfect movie. It's either my favorite film of all time or my second favorite film of all time. I love it. I remember, like I said, I remember watching it in Ireland with my cousin, and I was just transfixed by it. And as a 16-year-old, watching the Joker come to life in the way that it does on a huge IMAX screen, you can't help but fall in love with cinema.
I agree. And I think for two people, yourself and myself, who don't necessarily like the whole superhero genre, to hold it so highly, I think shows that it's, it had the ability to reach out to other audiences.
One of the things I think Nolan did really well with it is he almost made it the opposite of a superhero movie. He made it a crime thriller based on a terrorist. Yeah, that was how he approached it. And the scenes where the Joker has the hostages held hostage, the bits to camera where he's filming it on a smartphone, he let Ledger direct it, which is why it comes across so guerrilla and it comes across so intense and terrifying, because it probably would have been. Thank you for talking about The Dark Knight. It's mad that it is 10 years old. It's left such a legacy in terms of cinema, which I guess it's rare to see a film where you watch it and you think that is going to be considered a great.
I mean, 2008, I think was a pretty good. It was a good year, wasn't it? As a rule,
it was. Yeah.
What else? What else have we got around that time?
Well, there's a lot of films that I want to bring into this feature, which I guess we'll save for another couple of weeks. The one that I really want to talk about today is very different to The Dark Knight, Pineapple Express. I can't believe that film came out 10 years ago. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but Seth Rogen tweeted that it's been 10 years since Pineapple Express came out. And with it, he was tweeting some facts about the film, which I cannot wait to share with you. These are just a selection of them. Some of them do contain quite bad language, so apologies. But, I mean, if you've seen Pineapple Express, it's not exactly a massive shock. These are just a couple of my favourite ones. In Pineapple Express, Red, Danny McBride's character, was originally supposed to die the first time he was shot when he was tied up in his apartment. But we thought Danny McBride was so funny that we just kept on bringing him back to life, which I love. Danny McBride is very, very funny in the film. Another interesting fact about Pineapple Express. During Pineapple Express, Seth Rogen and his co-writer Evan Goldberg had to roll all the cross joints needed for the film. So they rolled about 100, and they rolled them exclusively themselves because no one else in the crew knew how to roll properly. This is probably my favourite one. Throughout the fight scene in Red's house in Pineapple Express, Seth Rogen broke his finger and Danny McBride got his head cracked open when Franco hit him with a bong.
Imagine saying that in A&E. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if anything summed up Pineapple Express,
that's it.
That's it. 10 years on since Pineapple Express, 10 years on since Dark Knight. And I mean, 2008 was a great year for cinema, and I can't wait to talk about more of the films. So, the last episode of the podcast, we were giving away some coffee machines from Aeropress. We set up the competition, and we do have the competition winners.
These guys are in for an absolute... This will revolutionise their coffee making experience, I promise.
I think Aeropress should start paying you for adverts.
No, I've used it today. But I took it to work for the first time this week.
So big.
And I sat in the cafe with my own ground beans. I took hot water from the woman behind the counter. I just decided I can't pay £2 for average coffee anymore.
Yeah, mate, I am totally with you.
I don't care what people thought of me there as I was sort of covertly doing the whole plunge thing, and I had 2 cups on the go, one with boiling water in, and it was... Yeah, I got a lot of pleasure out of it. So.
Good. And that's what Aeropress will give you, some guaranteed coffee pleasure. So, the winners of the competition on Twitter goes to Lucky Laura Love. Congratulations. And on Instagram, we have Vicky Hart. So, well done, guys. We will get in touch with you soon to organise delivery of your new Aeropress machines. Thank you for taking part. Thank you for listening. And me and Mike will speak to you fairly soon. I'm going on holiday next week. So
you're on holiday, yeah. So you're going to be sunning yourself.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Dubrovnik.
Dubrovnik.
The land of the Game of Thrones. You're going to do the tour.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of sweaty Game of Thrones fans.
Yeah. Well, you'll be one of them, I'm sure.
Like
dressed up as Tyrion Lannister wandering around the streets of Dubrovnik.
Yeah, we won't be here next week, but we'll get a podcast recorded for you very soon. Thank you for listening, as always. Mike, thank you for chatting. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure, as always.
And we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.